Hello, good afternoon, everybody. We're going to start shortly. Let us start. Hello, welcome again, everybody. Good afternoon, and welcome to the high-level dialogue on renewable energy and sustainable economic development, turning a vision into reality for Africa. My name is Michel Heidra, and I'm the Vice Minister for Climate and Energy of the Netherlands, and today Vice Chair of the IEA Ministerial. I look forward to this dialogue, which I think is on a very timely subject. Today we have with us a very eminent list of guests and speakers, including energy ministers from countries from the African continent, officials from international institutions, and representatives of the private sector. A special warm welcome to the ministers from Egypt, Tarek Al-Mola, Kenya, Davis Chirer, and Senegal, Antoine Diome, whose countries became associate members of the IEA in 2022 and 2023, just before the special 50th anniversary. We have a little less than an hour and 15 minutes because we have to vacate this room immediately afterwards, and I want to give everybody the opportunity to speak. I promise to be a strict moderator today. We have a printed time schedule on the tables for everybody's reference, and the screen will turn red if a speaker exceeds the time awarded. Therefore, without further ado, I'm pleased that Laura Cozy, the Director of Sustainability, Technology and Outlooks at the IEA, joins us for some opening remarks at this high-level dialogue. Laura, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Michel, and very many thanks to the Netherlands for really wanting to have this meeting about Africa. I have to say that it's the first time since our Executive Director opened the door that we are having here at our ministerial meeting, part of the IEA family, here at our table, Egypt, Senegal and Kenya, and it's really with warm heart that we welcome you here, and we want to listen and hear from you. It's wonderful to have you here at the table. We also have our long-standing partner, I can even call her a friend if she allows me to, the Commissioner for the African Union, Amania Bouzaid. So, very, very quickly, what's the issue? The issue is the following. All of us know that Africa is the continent in the world that has the richest endowment in solar, in hydro, in wind, in critical minerals, in fossil fuels, very, very rich in resources. What's the issue then? Why are we having this meeting? Numbers. What our numbers show is actually that Africa last year attracted 3% of global energy investment. 3%. Having 40% of the best solar resources, having most of cobalt, having most of hydro resources, and being home to 1 in 5 people in the world. This is really problematic. And if you look at what has happened over the past several years, there are two facts that are, in my view, outrageous, is that the investments, actually, the level of investments went down, and the share of investments in global investment went down too. So here around this table, we have countries that were able to actually attract more investment, so they have lessons to share with the others. One of our key analysis and finding shows that one of the key reasons why this is happening is that the cost of capital for energy projects and for clean energy projects in African countries is 2 to 3 times more expensive than in the rest of the world. So we are here all together to try to find ways to make sure that the money flows, and it flows at a reasonable rates. Now, here at the IEA, we provide analysis, but I want to spend the last 30 seconds here to also tell you that more and more our executive director is pointing us to action. So 3 actions that we're doing with our partners in Africa this year. The first, with Kenya, Minister Churchill himself is going to host for the first time in Africa the Global Energy Efficiency Conference, and we are very grateful for that. We are supporting Italy G7 that is working in partnership with African countries to put Italy at the center of the G7. And finally, with the President of Tanzania, the Prime Minister of Norway, and our Executive Director, on the 14th of May, we hope many of you will be back here in Paris at a conference looking at clean cooking. With this, I will conclude and pass back the floor to the chair.
Thank you very much, Laura. And very impressive numbers, 3% of investments, and at the same time 2 to 3 times more expensive. This will be put into more context by Dr. Amani Abu Zaid. Thank you for joining us today, the Energy Commissioner of the African Union, and she will provide us with a keynote speech and setting the scene for our discussion.
Thank you for the introduction, and allow me at the outset to thank the Netherlands for hosting this meeting, to thank all of you for coming to this meeting, and definitely to thank the IEA, not just for this meeting, but for the excellent work they have been providing to all of us, and especially the work on Africa, to which together we have dedicated 2 reports now dedicated to Africa. And it's important actually to do that. And now let us remember, all of us, we all know the number of 600 million people without electricity, and 1 billion persons, Africans, do not have access to clean cooking. We also know that Africa does 6% of the global energy use, and only 3% of the electricity demand. I mean, this is serious. But we are not here again to dwell on what Africa has or doesn't have, actually doesn't have, because we are deficient in energy all the way. And here, of course, I'm talking about Africa as a continent. Things are different from one country to another. And let us bear in mind that even those among us who have 100% coverage or access to electricity, for some it's not affordable, and for all it's not enough, because we are also increasing in numbers, I mean demographically all the time, which means that we are continuously in race with ourselves. So what needs to be done, and I'm not here again to advocate the case of Africa. I think we made the case a long time ago. Now, what needs to be done? One, the major challenge is capital, massive injection of capital, not just capital, but massive injection of capital at a cost that is reasonable, that really reflects the reality, that one that supports all the ambitions, not only that Africa have, that all of you have, because the future of all of us in this room is linked together, not only on the climate agenda, but specifically on the energy agenda, since again, Africa is at the heart of this energy agenda, and Africa very much could be the powerhouse of the world because of its potential. But however, Excellencies, you know that we cannot eat potential. Potential has to be fulfilled. So we are here to make it happen. Second major challenge is economic conditions. And here I'm talking to our ministers here in the room and those beyond, because it's only the ministers of energy. Investment in energy cannot be delinked from investment overall. The climate investment in our countries is not conducive for proper investment, does not always welcome the private sector, and the laws that keep changing from one month to another or with the changes of leadership is not going to help us. We have a green window of opportunity that we have to use. For the first time in our history, the world is listening to what Africa needs in terms of energy. Tragically, it only happened since 2022, but well, things being what they are, we have to use this window of opportunity to our benefit. 3, we are thinking of energy, of course, holistically. So demand and supply. Generation electricity is one thing, grid is another thing. So here to all of us, our plans should include grid. And remember that 30% of the energy actually produced, 30 to 40% is wasted because of our rundown, grids, and for the majority of the continent, grids do not even exist. 4th point, Microgrids, wonderful for remote areas, for some villages. But our ambition is to industrialize. Our ambition is growth. Our ambition is development. So we need the big buds. We need the big projects. And again, it's not just for ourselves, but for the whole world. Remember, I mentioned the people who live and die. Remember, there are people who die every minute of the day of despair. And we have to provide jobs, and we have to provide growth for everyone on this continent and in the world. We are not, of course, just sitting here idle, not doing anything. Africa is doing more than its share when it comes to climate. Remember, more than 20 of our countries depend mainly on renewable energy for their energy production, energy generation. Some countries, like my brother here in Kenya, can tell you that almost 90% of the grid, is renewables. All of our countries, whether they are fossil producers or consumers, all have renewable energy projects. We know because we want to use what we have and we need what we have. So we are not here to say otherwise. And we have been investing heavily in infrastructure in general. 60% of these investments come from our own national budgets, so not from abroad or not from partners, and 37% of the regional projects come also from our national budgets. Having said that, the partnerships that we are having across the continent, whether nationally or regionally, are wonderful. And I want here to thank all of you. I don't want to single out each and every one, not to make any protocol mistakes, but let me just talk about, the African Single Energy Market, a huge program and project, with a master plan that we are doing together with the European Union, and which hopefully will see the light in 2040, to cover all energy needs in Africa and to export. Just for you also to know, gas is very much, a part of our energy mix as transition fuel and as also base load. 20 African countries are contemplating nuclear energies in various stages. Now with SMRs, there are beautiful things happening also on nuclear. And last but not least, we need to industrialize, develop the local value chains in whatever that is coming when it comes to storage or the new technologies. And for our countries to create also local value chains for beneficiation, not just for export. So these are all things that we can do together. It's hard for me to squeeze everything in 5 minutes. I've been trying, but I hope I stimulated you enough, to create a positive conversation. And I'll be happy, of course, to talk to you after the session. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Fantastic vision of Africa as the powerhouse of the world, with industrial production, with modern technologies, and a lot of opportunities here. And we're going to hear some of the success stories and some of the needs that still exist from three of the next speakers from the African continent. And they will give short interventions on their vision, how to make this vision turn into a reality. I first turn to Mr. Davis Chirrer, Minister of Energy in Kenya. And as said by the Energy Commissioner just now, Kenya is at the forefront of using renewable electricity already and is already considering export opportunities. Can you tell us a little bit more about your experiences and some of the challenges that you face? Floor is yours.
Thank you, Michelle, and let me also thank Netherlands for hosting us for this high-level discussion on renewable and the way forward. I think it's befitting really to have a session like this to discuss what we need to do within this continent of opportunity. Like has been mentioned, we have had the numbers with respect to minerals critical minerals that we have to possibly process them, and rather than export them as raw, develop power in scale and speed to be able to really ensure that we are able to provide some of these critical minerals that are necessary for the development of renewable storage and so on and so forth in scale and speed. What we've basically done in our country with the advent of the challenge of climate change has been to work more critically on geothermal. An area I want to focus on because I will talk slightly more onto the green hydrogen. What we did a while ago was to accelerate the development of geothermal through de-risking our geothermal fields. So what we did as government was to develop a geothermal development company that's core mandate was basically to de-risk the fields. Geothermal development is very expensive in the initial phase, opening up the infrastructure and identifying the geothermal resource by possibly drilling, mapping and drilling 2, 3, 4 wells and being able to give it out to the private sector to develop. That way, we've been able to accelerate geothermal development, and today, Kenya stands 6th worldwide in geothermal energy mix. We are number 1. We dispatch 50% of our energy mix is geothermal. Of course, we've got hydro, wind, and solar. We have one of the largest wind farm in Africa, like Turkana wind farm, which develops 310 megawatts from a single place. Turkana, has been. I think it's important. If my president was here, he likes to identify Turkana, where the first human remains were discovered, as the home of mankind, and he likes to invite everybody to come home where humanity started. And so when you come home in May for the 9th Global Energy Efficiency Conference, you'll be coming home, and my president says it's unfair to ask people to come home with a visa. So you come to Kenya without a visa. It's a visa-free country today. So welcome to Kenya for the 9th energy efficiency conference in May, and you come home without a visa. In the geothermal development, where we've de-risked most of the fields, we'll have so much steam developed at scale, and therefore we are able to invite investors to convert the steam to power by bringing in their turbines. We work very closely with the Toshibas and Mitsubishi and so on and so forth in the turbine industry. And we do convert our geothermal energy very competitively at about 6 cents US to the grid, which is very competitive compared to fossil fuel, compared to, of course, I know at scale, wind and solar, but more importantly, geothermal is a good base load. It's available 100% of the time, except for downtimes when you are servicing the equipment. So it's a very good base load for us as Kenya. What we've done lately, Michelle, is to look at the excess geothermal field steam and move them to green hydrogen. So we are working with a number of various companies to convert our steam, run various electrolyzers that some concessionaire company is working on to move to green hydrogen to green ammonia, and therefore be able to commoditize power and transport it to other markets, but more importantly, take it to a green fertilizer. Being an agricultural economy, we have signed an off-take agreement with a company that is developing green ammonia, and that is great for us. More importantly, I think we'll talk more to critical minerals and how we need to add value through our open access on transmission, through ensuring that we do collaborate and work with our neighboring countries where there are green minerals, where there are minerals, to be able to convert them and ensure that they go to market as processed minerals. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Davis, and I look very much forward to homecoming and see all these green hydrogen developments in May this year. Tarek Amolla, Minister of Egypt, you're next. You hosted an excellent COP in the COP 27 2 years ago, and finance was at the heart of this COP, with the Loss and Damage Fund, with the transparency of the financial institutions, and many other important developments. So you've taken a leadership role in finance, and what can we learn from that, also from your own domestic experiences with low-emission hydrogen and other developments? The floor is yours.
Thank you, Michelle, and it's a good opportunity to talk about Egypt being an African country and how we did while hosting COP27. I just wanted to thank also Dr. Amani Abu Zaid, the Commissioner for Energy for Africa, because I was not going to repeat what she said, but we reiterate the importance of finance and concessionary finance for clean energies and the needs to, I would say, mobilize this kind of important financing. So, being an African country, as we said, we recognize, of course, the importance of the climate action, and we have urged the unified African voice, and therefore, during COP27 in Sharm el-Sheikh 2 years ago, we have been able really to represent our African continent, African brothers, African countries, achieving good outcomes for relevant African countries, especially for the Loss and Damage Fund. And this was for the first time ever. Actually, also, we acknowledge the critical need for the work toward enhancing the collective and urgent action to address the challenge of climate change. As you know, in Egypt, like all other African countries, and perhaps Michelle, you've stated that at the beginning, that we could be the light powerhouse for the world as Africa. So I think we have huge potential for renewable energy. The Egyptian government actually had continued to lead the economic reform and drive the country's effort toward green energy, improving the investment climate, supporting the private sector, and promoting clean energy projects. And I think that among the audience here, there are several countries and different private companies that have already signed several framework agreements for green hydrogen and low carbon hydrogen to be built in Egypt, and we are progressing together with them. We are working on all energy sources, with focusing on reducing emissions and providing energy in more environmentally responsible ways. And we have also to say that at the same time, we need to have and to allow the development also of some investments in hydrocarbons that will continue to be part of our global energy mix to support intermittent renewables. And this is something that we cannot ignore. We in Egypt, we have really updated our NDCs last year in order to reflect an ambitious plan of a target of 42% by the year 2035. And we have, for the first time in the region, Egypt has issued the first sovereign green bond to finance projects in clean transportation and sustainable water management. We have also ambitious targets for low carbon hydrogen production to capitalize on unique assets of strategic location and low cost renewables. Therefore, we talk about concessional financing, which is key to unlock not only Egypt's full potential, but Africa's full potential for renewable energy. We need to ensure that Africa receives the fair share of global pledged climate finance to achieve a just and balanced energy transition. And of course, therefore, the international financial institutions has critical role, including multilateral global banks, in order to avail concessional finance to de-risk investments. Africa still needs financial support to decarbonize its energy sources, including the low carbon gas and LNG, energy efficiency, which we are very efficient on that, methane abatement, and CCUS applications. So we as African countries, Egypt and all developing countries, cannot alone provide significant investment needed to achieve decarbonization and energy transition, and therefore we are calling for the need of urgent more finance to push and to accelerate such projects. Private capital also is important to unlock these large investments for energy transitions at scale. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Very good to hear both the concessional finance part, but also the green bond that you issued yourself. Very interesting combination of really important developments. Thank you for sharing these developments. Antoine Diome, the floor is yours, Minister of Energy from Senegal. Senegal has a large amount of natural gas resources that you're using also for the local population, and as a transitory fuel in the energy system, it plays a very important role. And can you tell us something about how you see what you've learned on natural gas also for the future, for also other developments? Antoine, the floor is yours.
Oui, je vous remercie
Thank you.
de m'avoir donné la parole et
Thank you
surtout
for
je
having
remercie
given me the floor.
les Pays-Bas
And I
pour
certainly thank most
l'opportunité qui nous est
warmly
offerte
the
à
Netherlands
travers cette
for having given us
rencontre
this opportunity
et
at
de-
this meeting to exchange views and to share our opinions on this subject. Let me start by specifying that for us, renewable energies constitute a marvelous opportunity. It really is an opportunity to transform our economy and to improve the living conditions of the population of Senegal. And so we have really made a qualitative leap forward over the last few years in this regard. In 2012, we had only 8% of our installed energy production coming from renewables, and now we've increased that to 31%. So if we look at the share of renewable energy and the total electricity production, we have 124 megawatts of renewable out of 1,000 and some in total. So it's really a leap forward. And so we have 11 renewable power plants. 10 of them are solar, 1 is aeolian. Now, of course, in January last year, 23, we signed a significant agreement with a number of international partners, including Canada, the United Kingdom, France, the European Union, and Germany. And what does this agreement state? The agreement foresees, among other objectives, that we are to reach a percentage of 40% by 2030. That's one of the objectives. But another one that is very much linked into the question that you have put about natural gas in Senegal. Today, gas is considered to be a transition source of energy for our country. First of all, because it's much less polluting than oil, but it also offers various other opportunities. First of all, gas to power. We'll be using gas to generate electricity with conversion of existing power plants that have been burning diesel fuel so far. And Senegal has already taken the decision no longer to use coal. So that's the first objective, gas to electricity, gas to power. The second one is gas to industry, because in addition to the natural gas fields, we want to develop electricity cities whose objective it will be to produce fertilizer that will substantially improve the productivity of our farmers, of our cultivators. And so we working with Mauritania and also in the gas fields of Yakar and Teraka, we want to achieve those two objectives. So yes, renewable energy, that's developing very well with both solar and wind-powered electricity generation, but also gas for direct development of industry and gas to generate electricity. And we're also doing a lot of research on hydrogen, with some pre-feasibility studies being carried out with a view substantially to reduce the CO2 emissions in my country. Thank you for your attention.
The industry, and thank you very much for sharing this with us. That brings us to the second part of our roundtable. We've now heard speakers from the African continent, and we now like to hear from speakers that like to partner up with their African partners, to hear also from them. And first, I'd like to give the floor to Kadri Simpson, Energy Commissioner of the European Commission. And of course, Kadri, the European Union will be a large energy importer for the very long future. So in a sense, Europe benefits from cheap energy, but at the same time, there's the goal, of course, of helping our African partners for development, which would mean you could pay a little bit more for the energy. So how do you see the two objectives coming together, import of energy for Europe and development in Africa? Kadri, the floor is yours.
Thank you, and let me first start by thanking IEA, the Netherlands and the African Union for organizing this panel. And from the very start of the European Commission mandate, Commission led by Ursula von der Leyen, we made our partnership with Africa a priority, and actually our first college-to-college meeting took place in Africa. We were meeting with our colleagues from African Union. And since COP28, where 132 countries joined our pledge, global pledge, initiated together with European Commission, but supported by IRENA and International Energy Agency, to triple renewables by 2030 and double energy efficiency improvements. This is clear that we see that this partnership and partnership, especially in the energy sector, where we are ramping up collaboration on renewables and energy efficiency, is even more important. And what's clear from this is that Europe will look to broaden and deepen its partnerships, including with Africa, to meet its own targets, but also encourage global decarbonization. And in turn, yes, we will continue to support the continent as it strives to develop resilient and sustainable energy markets and build its energy autonomy long term. And for us, this collaboration has several key aspects. As Dr. Abu Said already mentioned, we are working together to create a single electricity market, the African single electricity market, and this is something what we really appreciate, that in Europe we do have a well-interconnected electricity market that allows us to accommodate more renewables and avoid disruptions. So we want to share our knowledge with our neighbors. But one important avenue of collaboration is also renewable hydrogen. And we aim to make Africa a world champion in hydrogen exports. And there's strategic partnerships on renewable hydrogen and sustainable critical raw materials between us and some of our key partner countries are very good examples already. So we are working together with our partners to develop supply chains, spur private and public investments, and make it easier to do business. But it is a two-way street. The goal is indeed to export some of the green hydrogen to Europe to support our industry to decarbonize. but it also fosters skills and great jobs in our partner country. And more broadly, we are developing rules-based international hydrogen market. And we do have a new establishment, European Hydrogen Bank, that will work as a financing facility to further develop domestic and global markets for renewable hydrogen. And however, any development of renewable hydrogen production for export is not at the expense of supporting reliable and affordable energy access to the local population. And the Africa EU Green Energy Initiative, it is currently backed by 20 billion euros, is expanding renewable energy capacity and providing millions with access to green electricity already by 2030. And we are delivering this through a Team Europe approach. The EU institutions, also our development and financing institutions, together with great support of member states. This is backing this scale of 20 billion euros. And the last comment is about the just transition. Across Europe, we do have many regions who are impacted of transition more than others. And the Just Energy Transition Partnership launched within G7 framework with South Africa in 2021 and more recently with Senegal 2023. This is also supporting sector reforms and strategic investments, but is backed with dedicated financing. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kadri. And I'd now like to turn to Keynote, State Minister of Foreign Affairs from Japan. Japan has a long tradition of long-term contracts on critical materials. So the similar question to you, how do you see the double goal of trading critical materials at cheap prices and at the same time fostering sustainable development in Africa? Floor is yours.
Here we go. Thank you, Michelle, and I'd also like to commend Netherlands and the IEA as well as AU for bringing us together today. I don't think I should even repeat myself on how important Africa is in its role in global clean energy transitions. But to make this happen, I believe two things are goal. One is socially and environmentally sustainable approach is the key in tapping into this opportunity. And another is capacity building. And in that sense, Japan, to give you an example, has been cooperating with Africa through the Tokyo International Conference on Africa Development, we call it TCAD, for more than 30 years. And our belief is that Japan should cooperate to facilitate Africa's own lead development and green growth, including energy transitions under the Green Growth Initiative with Africa. And in addition to enhancing green growth, we believe that Africa has a great potential to be an exporter of clean energy, including in terms of critical minerals. And I believe it's Japan's belief when we do overseas assistance is that Africa should be in control of their own minerals, of what they have. And again, socially and environmentally sustainable approach, what we call it, is instrumental. And in establishing this, we like to go in between the private public sectors and try to promote good governance and provide economic benefit to. This is the key too. We want to provide jobs. We want to benefit local workers and communities. And such an approach will contribute ultimately to reducing project risks and attracting more sound investment. See, Japan, it's our belief that even if our private firms in the short term do not get the longer end of the stick, ultimately, if we support our country, Africa, in the long term, we will benefit from that. So when we do these development aids, we make sure there are no hidden agendas. We don't weaponize our tools, no manipulation like some states do. We just can't do that. I think I don't want to sound too naive, but integrity is the key in providing support. And of course, our firms will benefit in the long run, but even if they don't in the short run, I think ultimately, if the global, it's much more than what Japan needs. It's what the global society wants. And we're in support of strengthening the value chains of clean energy manufacturing as a whole. And I believe that the IEA can play a role in supporting African partners in promoting this application of environmentally and socially sustainable approach in critical minerals. And we, of course, as Japan, will support the IEA on working on this, on this ultimate goal. And to conclude, I'd like to just say that clean energy transitions will create opportunities for Africa, in Africa, and eventually by Africa. I don't want to sound like a former American president, but I really believe so. And we will continue to cooperate with Africa to tap into the potential to promote sustainable development in collaboration with the international partners, including the IEA. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Integrity is the key to support. A very good line, an important principle. We now turn to the international institutions. And may I please ask you to be succinct, as we're already running slightly out of time. And first, I'd like to give the floor to Damilola Ogunbiji, the Special Representative of the UN Secretary General of Sustainable Energy for All and co-chair of the UN Energy.
Thank you, Moderator. Your Excellencies, distinguished leaders. In the last decade or so, developing countries have received relatively low when it comes to global investments linked to renewable energy. Just to give you an example, Sub-Saharan Africa, for example, has received less than 1.5% of the amount of investments globally in the last 20 years. I believe all of us in this room know that low energy cannot mean great economic growth. So it's important to show with the data that, IEA puts out why people are lagging behind. This figure is simply unacceptable in African countries because African countries want to grow at the rate of developing countries as well. To ensure that emerging markets in developing countries, especially those in Africa, realize their clean energy potential, they need to take advantages of the opportunities that currently are faced in developing countries. And when we talk about the need for transition, I think it's important to put it in context. My sister from the AU said, when you are still in a continent where 600 million people have no access to electricity at all, so they would never watch what we are doing here today, and we have 900 million people do not have access to clean cooking, and clean cooking is the 5th largest cause of an African woman, you can understand that it's not just a climate crisis, it's a health crisis, and it's a whole of economy crisis that we're dealing with. However, and I'm really thankful for the ministers here today, there is some bright light. Africa is leading the way in terms of climate positivity, not just because we are focusing on using it more efficiently because there's not enough to use, but we're also focusing how does it drive economic growth. So I'm just going to talk about 2 points since I have 1 minute left of which is critical to really make these thrive. So the adoptions of policies and incentives, everyone talks about you have to have a policy regime that works, and I completely agree. But we also have to understand that projects drive policy. I worked in the Nigerian government for many years, and I worked in a situation when people said solar just doesn't work. And we had to show solar projects. So thanks to the German government at the time, the EU at the time, who actually believed in doing projects. And that's when Nigeria decided that 30% of their energy mix will be from renewables. The other thing that is very, very critical for this working is to make sure there's access to renewables actually in country. We're working on the Renewable Energy Manufacturing Initiative. Currently, it takes between 6 to 9 months to bring lithium batteries into continent. You can't ask a country to stop what it's doing for that time frame to bring these in. So as our colleagues, and we heard from Japan, these are technologies you could actually bring in. Secondly, everyone talks about increased levels of investment, but nothing happens without funding. It just doesn't. Either bilateral agreements like the Netherlands have with solar system manufacturing. Denmark is doing a lot of work now with African countries. Germany is heavily investing through GIZ, and then Italy is also looking at the policy environment. All these things really, really do add up, but there needs to be a key focus on how to fund African energy and African renewable energy systems. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good examples of what is happening and what is needed. Let me now turn to Frans Drees-Groos, the director, regional director from the World Bank Group, and he joins us virtually. So let's see if the system works.
Yes, thank you so much.
It works.
Thank you so much. Thank you to the Netherlands. Side, mobilizing private investment requires, for mini-grid suppliers or solar home system suppliers, requires creating an ecosystem in which private investors have legal and regulatory certainty, where you have currency convertibility, where you have access to patient equity, and where you have debt financing on concessional terms. So let me give you a very concrete example of what that means. I'm connecting to you from Nigeria. Nigeria is the country with the single biggest access deficit on the planet. 85 million Nigerians don't have electricity today. In December, the World Bank approved a loan for $750 million that will leverage $1 billion in private investment and bring electricity to 17 million of those 85 million people. That's 25% or 20% of Nigeria's access deficit. That's a huge shutdown, but I think it's just the beginning. We'd like to do much more. We'd like to bring power to 100 million people by 2030, and to do that, we need a successful replenishment of our IDA fund for the poorest, which is being recapitalized this year. And let me say, since some of previous speakers have talked about green hydrogen exports, that if governments earn royalties and taxes from those green hydrogen projects, they can, of course, steer that money to programs like the one in Nigeria to generate even more private investment and even more people with access. So thank you very much, and back to you.
Thank you very much, Frans, for joining virtually with us today. Now we go to some speakers of the private sector. There are also some other examples of good practices. And the first is Siegfried Hugeman of the African Hydrogen Partnership. Siegfried, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Dear ladies and gentlemen, thank you for having me here today. My name is Siegfried Hugeman, and I'm the Secretary General of the African Hydrogen Partnership, the only continent-wide African association dedicated to green and natural hydrogen. So please allow me to share good news with all of you. The large-scale commercialization of green hydrogen has effectively already started in Africa. So with a project in Namibia, baseload renewable power, that basically allows to provide continuous baseload using hydrogen storage technology. I think that is a very encouraging development. The construction work is supposed to start this year. Another good news is we started the African Hydrogen Partnership at the end of 2020 and started taking in new members in March 2021. And the leadership team of the African Hydrogen Partnership managed to make this organization profitable, although we are non-profit, so let's call it a surplus, financial surplus, literally within 2.5 years. That is another very encouraging sign. So what do we focus on primarily is the development of the domestic markets. Export, of course, is important, but we see more greater opportunities on the domestic side of things. And here, please allow me to mention the hard-to-abate sectors with a strong focus. Where is hydrogen basically unavoidable? Where are the sectors where we do not have to compete basically with battery technology and so on and so forth? I guess all of you guys have heard about decarbonizing the shipping industry, green fertilizer, baseload renewable power, etc. So that is what we are focusing on. That allows us to bring developers and off-takers together that can work in a cash market environment. And so we do not require hugely subsidized financial derivatives markets, which is important as well. Last but not least, our philosophy is based on the fact that consume the hydrogen where it is produced in order to keep the cost low. So it's a bit early to speak about any specific details, but we are working now on various initiatives where we already know, those initiatives will be techno-commercially feasible, but the challenges there are more so on the political side of things. Another important aspect is the electric grid. We have heard about Nigeria, for example, so there's a power generation and then the electric grid, but that offers tremendous opportunities as well. Nigeria has a total power generation capacity coming from diesel generators of more than 40 gigawatt. And a kilowatt hour can cost $50 plus. That is a tremendous opportunity for hydrogen because hydrogen offers the flexibility that is needed. So I believe that green hydrogen and natural hydrogen has a great future in Africa. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Siegfried. And we now heard a lot about finance, about solar installations, but there's also, and grid, but there's also other infrastructure needed. Boudewijn Simons of the Port of Rotterdam, can you shed us some light on infrastructure, port infrastructure, storage, etc.?
Yes, thank you, Michel. Without transport, no supply chain. Without storage, no buildup of cargo for further transportation. The Dutch government and the Port of Rotterdam work closely together in energy diplomacy all around the world. We believe the hydrogen economy can yield great benefits for both producers and buyers. After all, we're all facing the same challenge worldwide to transition our energy system from fossil to renewable. We have built strong connections with countries on the African continent like Morocco, Namibia, Egypt, South Africa, and others. Feedback from all these connections shows we can specifically, as a port, contribute by sharing knowledge to further unlock and develop ports with industrial areas. It's not just a matter of expertise for the outbuilding of ports. For these kind of projects, we can bring in our maritime and industrial networks, and of course our own expertise as a port development company with technical, nautical, as well as commercial expertise and knowledge of the optimal clustering of industries. We expressly do not just connect ourselves with projects, we also involve experienced parties from our port community that are looking to invest. We also work closely together with other Dutch state-owned companies like Invest International and the Dutch Gas Union. It is important these developments primarily offer benefits at the local level. Think of the availability of desalinated water and bringing renewable energy to scale that will lead to lower prices. Another important aspect, aside from the local development, will be establishing corridors between producers and off-takers. This is to offer more security to supply and demand, also within the African continent itself. And Rotterdam can support in this matchmaking. We can take care of the required infrastructure, help parties throughout the supply chain to get organized. Our port community members are already preparing themselves for these kind of developments. It's my pleasure to give the floor over to my neighbor, who will speak further to this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Boudewijn. Then I indeed give Tobias Bishop Niems immediately the floor to tell us more about local benefits.
Thank you very much. Thanks a lot for the invitation. Happy to talk about what we do in Namibia. Tobias Bishop Niems, my name. I'm a board member at Enertrack. We are one of the largest renewables investors and operators in Germany. One of our projects globally that we develop is the Hyphen project in Namibia. A few key facts. By 2030, we aim to deploy 7 gigawatt of wind and renewable capacity, 3 gigawatt electrolyzer capacity in order to produce up to 2 million tons of ammonia per year. In total, after 3 build-out phases, we will have 12 to 13 billion euros of investment deployed. Now, what's special about this project and what's the status of this project out of the many, many announcements that sound, I must admit, quite similar to what I have just put down in numbers? First of all, the project was the successful contender in a competitive procurement program that was not started by the EU, by Germany, by the World Bank, or by any other international organization. It was started out of a strategy that the Namibian government gave itself to develop the country on the back of the key competitive advantages that the country has, one of which being the production of green hydrogen. The commercial participation of the Namibian state in this project was part of that competitively tendered process. As a result, the Namibian government, as a true partner of us in the project, is a 24% co-investor in the project and receives a total of 50 to 60% of the total value creation via dividends on the 24%, corporate tax, land rent, royalties, which will all flow into a newly created sovereign wealth fund to foster sustainable economic development. Out of the tender, a 40-year concession agreement was end negotiated and signed in May last year, which can now be, in our opinion, blueprint for industrialization of countries on the back of green hydrogen. The co-benefits for Namibia are vast: 15,000 jobs during construction, 2,000 to 3,000 permanent jobs, the complete decarbonization of the electricity sector of Namibia due to the surplus electricity alone of a project of this magnitude, water for the municipalities in the area from surplus water, surplus electricity and hydrogen for the Southern African power pool, and new downstream industries. The opportunity for African sustainable development, I believe, there's the opportunity to build sustainable new green energy trade partnerships. These new export and trade opportunities can achieve long-term sustainable growth because they are quite different to what we know from oil and gas. The main difference is the resource. It's not a resource game, it's a manufacturing game. We are not talking about extracting a resource, shipping it away, and then it's gone, like coal, oil, gas, or diamonds, or whatever the resource was. The resource is wind and sun. That doesn't go away. We are manufacturing wind and sun into something that creates value that then becomes the export product. Main issue is the bankability, and with that, the cost of capital related. Host countries like Namibia do a lot to address this, but there's something that we need to address as well. We need offtake certainty. We need certainty around volumes, certainty around prices that naturally cannot come from the host countries. It must come from the off-taker countries, meaning the EU, Japan, South Korea. With that, we can achieve full industrialization of a country like Namibia within a generation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And when you talk about finance, it's always good to hear an expert, and experts in finance are bankers. So over to you, Rentia van Toner at Standard Bank, South Africa.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. Just briefly, Standard Bank is one of the biggest banks on the continent. We are currently in 20 African countries, also in some countries known as Stanbic Bank. Our presence is quite important for us. We got local balance sheet that we do deploy, a strong commitment in terms of renewables and green energy. I think the key thing for us as a commercial bank, just in unlocking the power sector and the commercial viability, is absolutely around the enabling environment. I think that's the one key point, strong commitment from government, policy certainty, and how do you crowd in investors to be able to give you that comfort that those projects are sustainable. I think the second point that is important to raise is the commitment to be able to develop those projects under very difficult circumstances. And many project developer sponsors will complain that it takes quite long to develop projects in Africa. I think to a certain extent that is absolutely true. One needs to be open-minded around the support around development capital. So the partnerships between commercial banks, DFIs are critical. We find that blended finance solutions are very optimal in terms of supporting sponsors around bankability, but at the same time, we need DFIs to play the role that they should be playing. We do fund on-grid, we funded off-grid solutions. I think in many cases we played the role of a local currency provider, which I also think is a very important point to note. We cannot continue to only look at hard currency solutions in many countries, and I think if you look at our portfolio across some of the countries presented today, we find that the sooner we develop those type of local currency solutions in funding larger scale projects, the better. I just want to conclude with giving you a good example of how successful one can be if you have a committed funder, a committed developer. We've closed and financed a project that is currently operational within 3 years. We bid the project, we reached financial close. It's the largest project on the continent, 540 megawatt of PV solar with 1.1 gigawatt hours of battery storage. And it is currently producing in Keynote in South Africa, and I think it's a really good example of what can be done if you've got the right partners. We committed roughly in dollar terms $800 million. We were a sole financier and we distributed some of that debt within the first month after closing the project. So I think one needs to focus on some of these good stories and keep going. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Focus on good examples. We now come to the open round of discussions where everybody has 2 minutes, and I already note 3 speakers that asked for the floor. First of all, Minister Tinne van Straten of Belgium, who also holds the rotating presidency of the European Union at the moment. Tinne.
Thank you, Michel, and thank you for IEA for organizing this and for all the speakers who gave their insights. There were many speakers, so maybe it's good to bring the hook there where it belongs in the introduction of Laura Cosi. Africa is home to 1 out of 5 people in the world, and yet 600 million of them lack access to electricity. Africa has 60% of the best solar resources, but only 3% of global energy investment is going to Africa. So it's a little bizarre to hear that projects can only be bankable because of host countries. How can we then organize clean energy to all and clean energy to Africa in general? If we depend on host countries to make projects bankable and to export all of the energy produced in Africa. So it is my firm belief that host countries do have a responsibility, but their responsibility is to be Africa-oriented and people-oriented, and clean energy for Africa first. And then I also believe that we have to look for more innovative ways to work in partnership. And how that we have done it before is maybe not fit for purpose anymore. I think the example of APRA within IRENA I think was inspired by the Nairobi Declaration, is one of the examples that could serve us. And it's maybe also, someone said, the Amula Gombi projects drive policy. And if we have this bottom-up approach, like in APRA, we can design our policies better. And my last 10 seconds, I'm going to use to funding. We have been so bad in funding, including in all the commitments and promises that we made in climate negotiations, but we need reform of our multilateral institutions to better fund these projects. Otherwise, clean cooking, we will still be talking at the 100th anniversary of IEA.
Thank you, Tinne. And now over to Gianpaolo Cutillo from the G7 presidency.
Thank you. I want first of all to thank the Netherlands, of course, and the African Union for hosting this important meeting. And thanks also to Laura in the IEA for reminding that Africa is a key priority, if not the priority for Italy, also in the framework of our current G7 presidency. We aim at promoting equitable partnership for a common sustainable growth and industrialization. And in order to do that, we need to address these challenges abiding by the principle of nothing about Africa without Africa. For these reasons, our Prime Minister launched the Mattei Plan for Africa at the recent Italy-Africa Summit, which was held in Rome, which has energy as one of its main pillars. A plan that will enhance Europe-Africa relations, especially on sustainable energy and growth, and will greatly feature the G7 work this year. This brings me to today's discussions, because the challenge for a just and mutual growth between our countries and African ones is, of course, intertwined with the fight against climate change, the implementation of energy transition, and the need to ensure a sustainable future for us all. These dossiers are a priority for our leadership, especially with regards to our initiatives in Africa. We are already engaged in financing projects for climate mitigation and adaptation in developing countries through the newly established Italian Climate Fund, which is predominantly devoted to African countries and, of course, in addition to our development cooperation. Furthermore, we are also working to design initiatives to mobilize and pool resources, including from the private sector and the civil society. More specifically, we are working on an initiative jointly developed with the IEA and UNDP on enhancing energy access and growth in Africa through technical assistance and financing tools. The idea is to launch a platform to boost green projects and investments in Africa, focusing on transition.
Okay. Gianpaolo.
Agricultural projects. So the platform would focus on addressing past and present international assistance in the energy sector, discern best practices, and identify existing gaps, acting as a much-needed link between projects seeking support and investors. So we look forward to coordinate our efforts for building bridges and achieving a common success. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and also for your leadership in the G7 on these important issues. Anna from Portugal, and I see there are still 6 flags up. I'll ask here if we can vacate the room because we have to vacate it at 2:30. So what we're going to do is I'll see if I can give everybody 1 minute. So think already ahead if you can be very, very brief and succinct. Anna, you first.
Thank you very much. Let me start by congratulating the IEA for the report on financing clean energy in Africa. We have translated it to Portugal, and it's a very important report. Thank you for that. I will focus on a very concrete issue regarding public finance for the sake of time. It's an innovative mechanism that actually Portugal developed together with Cape Verde. It's a debt swap. What we do is we convert public debt of Cape Verde vis-à-vis Portugal, we convert it into a climate fund that Cape Verde can use to finance green projects in Cape Verde selected by Cape Verde. This is very important because it benefits not only the country, but as Amina rightly said before, it actually benefits us all. And that's the purpose, that's what's driving Portugal into this path. We started with 30 million euros, we can enlarge it up to 140, the full amount of public debt. We have enlarged it to other countries, and basically the goal here would be for this to maybe be an inspiration for other creditor countries that in this way can actually foster the clean transition in Africa. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anna. A very good initiative. Then I start with EBRD, 1 minute. Your
Thank you, and I want to pick up the point by Minister Chirchir about the need to de-risk and bring down the cost of capital. And first of all, really wanted to thank the IEA for doing just that, for doing it by providing really excellent data and analysis that is really important actually on the project level itself. And we use that data very much when we make our financing decisions. For example, we financed and advised the development of the Benban solar park in Egypt, the largest solar park on the continent, and we very much look forward to furthering our cooperation and our partnership as we also gradually expand to sub-Saharan Africa. Thank you.
Thank you very much also for being so succinct. My colleague from Switzerland.
One of the key challenges to have bankable projects is the quality of the projects. And I would like to draw your attention on a new initiative called Blue Dot Network, a project-level certification process that incentivizes quality infrastructure investment. And the Blue Dot Network will be hosted at the OECD, and its pilot phase launched in April this year. And this could help also to close or to reduce the gap for financing new projects. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this contribution. Cocoa Networks.
Thank you very much. And I'd like to thank the IEA for the invitation as well. I would just like to pick up on the point made by several of our colleagues here, including Damilola and also a colleague from Belgium, about the importance of thinking about renewables in clean cooking for Africa, which it's good to hear that there are more and more people around this table who are talking about this important topic, and the importance of more research, policy and funding needed for this area. I work for Cocoa Networks, which now sells sustainably produced bioethanol for cooking fuel to over 1.2 million households around East Africa. And there are more companies other than just us putting development capital and research into more and more innovations into looking for renewable solutions for clean cooking. I just wanted to raise the profile of this important innovation. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Many mentioned the importance of clean cooking, and there will be in May a whole summit devoted to clean cooking here at the IEA. That brings us to next speaker.
Yes, the International Hydropower Association. Many thanks for this important forum and good discussion. But there does seem to be a bit of a mismatch between the discussion and the data. We need to talk about hydropower. I mean, hydropower provides the vast majority of decarbonised electricity in the continent at the moment. It provides the balance, provides flexibility, provides storage, many of the issues that has been discussed as challenges around the table. And what's more, it's around 90% untapped within Africa. The potential is there, and that's not even starting on the potential for pumped storage, hydropower and off-river options. But, as many people around the table have said, of course, it needs de-risking. And I'll just say there are lots of examples around the world about how this is being done. IHA is very happy to work with governments to help deliver, to give those examples and to work through them as governments do plan that. And I would say the sector is ready.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Global Renewables Alliance with the single voice for the renewables industry internationally. First, I'd like to express our huge gratitude to all the governments in the room who signed the pledge of tripling renewables leading up to COP28 and supporting the agreement in the final GST text. It's game-changing, really the beginning of the renewables century. Specifically, the leadership of the Kenyan government, Mr. Chirchir and your President Ruto, he went as far to say tripling is not enough, we need to do 5 times in the African continent. So I celebrate that. Support of the European Commission was instrumental, and also Essie for all, Damilola, your support in getting that tripling pledge agreed. Of course, now we need to turn that ambition into accountability and action. And we work with our colleagues at the IEA, Paolo and his team, on the renewables tracker to monitor and report the progress annually up to 2030. I think that's critical. And secondly, on accountability, on action. 2 things. One is permit.
Sorry, I have to look at the time, but we really like your contribution and the importance of monitoring the tripling. EITI.
Thank you, Chair. And surely 1 minute is not too short to focus on the collective challenge that we face of strengthening governance to underpin the renewable sector, energy sector's growth. From 20 years of experience in raising standards of governance across extractives, we have seen that transparency and multi-stakeholder dialogue can be a means of building trust and bringing a really wide range of voices into policy making. Almost half of countries implementing the ITI standard are in Africa, among them Senegal, which has made very significant progress building on opportunities in the gas sector. So it's clear that the African continent cannot miss out on the opportunity to convert massive capital investments into sustainable economic growth. However, there is a growing challenge globally relating to corruption, corruption scandals, and community opposition. And the renewable sector, I would argue, is not immune to this risk. It risks undermining societal acceptance of renewables and slowing investment. Transparency matters for mineral supply chains, which also fuel growth of renewables. So, to conclude, good governance and collective action should be seen as an enabler to the renewable sector, and rather than as an obstacle to growth.
Thank you. Indeed. That brings us to the final speaker of today from Renewables 21.
Thank you very much and congratulations. I will not speak very much about the congratulations now to have more time. An observation coming from a multi-stakeholder policy network, but also somebody involved in renewable energy since many times. There are some facts we hear with the same voices, with the same metrics, with the same facts since many years. I don't think that anybody here in the room we cannot allow ourselves that we find ourselves in 15 years back and we look back and things have not moved. But there is such a risk. I would like to underline one thing where transparency, I think, is important, multi-stakeholder is important. We look at the same thing as renewable energy sources on the African continent, but we look from different perspectives and we have different interests. I think there's really a need to build new partnerships, probably with a joint agreement on key performance indicators that take into account local benefits, regional benefits, continental benefits, and global benefits. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And that is almost a perfect summary of all the things in this discussion. So sorry for running a little bit out of time, but it gave us the opportunity to hear as many voices as possible around this table. I think we had a very rich discussion. I'm not going to summarize everything, but we heard of a grand vision of Africa as the powerhouse of the world, the many opportunities that it gave, some concrete examples that we've seen in some of the ministers gave us from the African continent, and also some of the challenges and ways how to overcome it, from finance to infrastructure to local co-benefits to good governance. So I thank you all for your attention and look forward to continue this discussion with all of you towards a brighter future. Thank you all.